Hey everybody, what's up? Today we have a guest on the show and we're going to get some reactions. This is my good friend Mark Babson. Mark, why don't you tell us about yourself?
Hey, how do you do, everybody? Good to be here. My name is Mark. I live in Salem. I went to a conservatory in the Netherlands for 4 years, about 2000 to 2004. I'm a violinist. I played in orchestras in Mexico, and here in the Willamette Valley, I was an adjunct professor at Willamette of violin.
All right, so what that sounds like is Mark knows exactly what he's talking about. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to show him some videos of some really cool guitar stuff, and Mark's going to tell us what he thinks about it in, operating in his parameters of, academics and everything else. So here we go. Well, the first thing we're going to check out is a classic solo from Tornado of Souls. Of course, Marty Friedman's an awesome guitar player. I did a whole thing on Megadeth on this entire album of Rest in Peace. So what we're going to do is listen to the solo, and we're going to get Mark's straight up reaction for it. You ready, Mark?
Let's go.
All right. All right, Mark, tell us what you think about that.
Well, there's a lot to say. So the first thing that struck me, is like it's kind of consistent of vibrato throughout, like really sort of wide vibrato. Rhythmically, it's very uniform, from my perspective, like as a classical musician, you just don't find people who've got the chops to play a solo like that. Or the courage, frankly, So I mean that part, it takes some balls, to just do that. And on the other hand, here's the analytic perspective or whatever is like, okay, so he's doing 3 or 4 chords, and it's kind of predictable stuff, Or so anyway. So that's what I got to begin with. And what, how did I do? What's the
right? So you're saying that it's predictable with the chords that it's following.
Well, let's see. Let me say that again. And I say that as so I don't want to get stuck there. What I mean is that there are many other things that are really more valuable. Which is that, like, again, with the vibrato, which I noticed first. So he's also moving, like extensions or something, like he'll vibrate and then like change pitch by a whole half step, a whole step. Again, I'm a violin player. You can't. This is impossible, So that's a different. It's outside of my idiom, So then to say, oh, well, it's predictable. I mean, this is what somebody says who doesn't understand, So. Just that there's a lot of artistry there, and you could tell. However, at the same time, what I mean by the predictable is like, okay, you're trying to sell this to somebody. You're trying to say like, hey, I'm at a high level, and you guys better recognize it right now.
Absolutely. And Marty, it's interesting that you pointed that out, the vibrato, because that's one thing that guy is known for. Is his phrasing and his vibrato. And like you're saying, he'll bend a lot of notes a half step away up to pitch, or even a whole step up to get to the right pitch that he wants. And I did a video about Marty when he sat down with Nick Bocott, and he talked about playing over a chord progression as if it's you don't necessarily have to follow it all the time. And that's one thing he'll do is if something has like a droning bass note, he'll take he'll make his own chord progression out of that drone. So a lot of times that's what's going on, is that it seems like he may not be playing tonically over each chord, but he resolves it with that vibrato is how he kind of plays, if that makes any sense.
That's interesting as you're speaking. I don't know how much. So one more thing I'll try and get out, and then which is that, I'm still reflecting on, okay, why do I go to this judgment about, it's predictable or something, and that's because I'm coming out of a context of music that's composed. It's composed. Somebody sat down. They got this plan. They're copying plans of other people that are decades or centuries old in some cases, and it's deliberately complex. It's deliberate, and actually, and a lot is lost in that way. A lot is lost in terms of immediacy of experience. So I'm So it's cool to see somebody. It's exciting to see music being made in the moment. That's such a necessary element in this art.
Right on. Yeah, and you could tell a lot of times when things are thought out. I think a lot of times, as a guitar player myself, like we have a preconceived idea of how we want things to go, and like we'll start with a lick or a phrase and build from there. But I definitely think with Tornado of Souls on that solo that, like you're pointing out, I think a lot of that probably was ideas that he had refined, but it was mostly like the organic live feel of it is what makes it what it is.
Thank you. That's cool.
Yeah. All right, well, let's move on. So the next thing we're going to listen to is Technical Difficulties by Racer X. I'm a huge Paul Gilbert fan. He's a huge influence. Obviously, all these people we're going to listen to are influences on my playing. But Paul especially, I had the Terrifying Guitar Trip VHS. It was the first thing I ever bought from Guitar Center. It cost like $80, and I couldn't play anything out of it for like 2 years. But anyway, what we're going to do now is we're going to listen to the solo from Technical Difficulties. Obviously, there's so many Racer X songs, and there's so many. We can listen to the whole thing, but we got to move on. We got more cool guitar stuff to listen to. So, Mark, here is Technical Difficulties by Racer X, Paul Gilbert. To stop because we listened to the whole song, and we're not listening to the whole song. I'm promising myself I will not listen to each song in its entirety and subject Mark to that. But anyway, Mark, what do you feel about that?
Well, it's really different. So there's again, out of the idiot, it's like it's more what I'd call romantic, So it's more melodic. It's more and again, I don't mean that. Is this good or bad? I try not to go there. But very full, very, real impressive. Real impressive. Like to also clear. Well articulated. That's my impression right away. Is that the beat behind it is a little bit slower. Clearly, music, it's just like setting up this solo, and makes me think of Pink Floyd. What do I know, Yeah, those are some of my impressions.
That's interesting that you said Pink Floyd, because as soon as you said that, I understood exactly what you meant. It's like when the chords fall backwards is something that Pink Floyd does all the time. And like Comfortably Numb in that solo that David Gilmour plays, it does step down, walk down that scale. And that's kind of an interesting thing that you pointed out, because I heard it right away as soon as you said that. So, and like you talked about articulation, and that's one thing that Paul Gilbert is known for, is his articulation. He's a very good alternate picker, the that motion and like a staccato effect, if you will. And that's one thing that he's really known for in those wide intervallic string skipping arpeggios. And in our jamming together and working on music, that's something that is applicable in what we do as well, in how I approach some of the things that you've shown me on the violin. I play them in that sort of way, where instead of making arpeggios over all the strings, I'll skip positions instead and over strings, because it just makes more sense in that context, especially with a lot of the things that a violin plays. That's from my perspective only. So I could be wrong, but that's kind of like what I've seen in that. And and I think compositionally, like you were talking about earlier with the Tornado of Soul solo, that I think that on that solo for technical difficulties, it's probably something that Paul did improvise. It has a very organic, improvised feel, like maybe he did like have a preconceived notion or idea, but I definitely catch that too, that it was a improvised, let's go for it kind of a thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's, as you're just speaking, I think there's so much overlap between the techniques of violin and guitar, that, I mean, like, just for instance, Niccolo Paganini, the great virtuoso, was a virtuoso violinist and a virtuoso guitarist. I think he wrote more stuff for guitar than he did for violin. I mean, so there's a lot of a lot that can be shared, or more than is sometimes, because people are so sort of insular in their tastes very often, and just educated in some like narrow area. And so, to hear like that kind of lyrical, this like, I don't know, song, like these long held notes. This is an effect that to me fits on a violin really well, because you can vary the speed of the vibrato, you can vary the pitch a little bit, and that gives interest to that type of the type of writing.
And you mentioned like romantic. What does that mean for people that like define what that means?
Oh, romantic. Okay, so I mean, romantic in classical music is a historical period, so that would be like Beethoven would be kind of the beginning of that. So like about 1800 to about 1900, something like that, and it varies from place to place. And so, but it also means that the music is the performer is emphasized more than the composer. And so the performer is expected to take liberties and to really be expressive in terms of emotional, emotional in terms of like, what are you feeling right now, rather than, some kind of bigger framework about, this whole piece is about, I don't know, God's goodness or something, I mean, like whatever it happens to be. And so, yeah, it's more sort of a platform for the individual to show, this is what's going on for me. I'm suffering, like great existential difficulties at the moment, So
technical difficulties.
There you go.
That's the name of the track too. That's funny. And I think that maybe like that's what relating it to like guitar speak, if you will, is like that's like the improvisational side of it, maybe, because like that romanticism and from the little I do know of classical music, like romantic composers would be like people like Chopin,
sure,
right, stuff like that. And we've all seen Tombstone where Doc Holliday is playing the piano and the guy's like, play Captown Races, and he's like, I'm playing some Chopin or whatever. So that's my introduction to Chopin. But anyway, moving on, we're gonna heavy things up a bit, and we're gonna play one of my favorite guitar solos, a song that I've covered in the past, and that is good old Fermented Offal Discharge. And I am a huge Necrophagist fan. I'm sure Mark's heard me say their name a gazillion times, but things are definitely going to get more intense, Mark, so let's check out Fermented Offal Discharge. Mark, I'm dying to know your opinion of that. What do you think of that?
We're talking about the guitar playing in particular?
Yes,
or the
guitar solo. I guess I let it roll a little bit longer just to give you a contrast from the melodicism of the solo and the melody to it being inside of a song that's extremely aggressive and pretty brutal. I mean, it's not the most brutal thing in the world, is whatever, but pretty heavy stuff. So, what was your opinion of the guitar playing?
Oh, the guitar, I really like the guitar work, and it's what I like about it is that it's unpredictable. I mean, the pitches it's surprising, and it goes to places I wouldn't guess, and also rhythmically it's varied, and that's it's like, yeah, I mean, just like very very interesting, so as a guitar, the guitar part, it's like, wow, that's cool, cool, and also clearly a lot of skill is involved, so the whole thing, again, to make a comparison with with some kind of like orchestral music, which is not, it's more uniform than what I'm habituated to in the, and I would say, in terms of the volume and also like the fullness, so there's not as much variety as there would be in a, symphony by Schubert or something, and just like, the woodwinds are going to play now, and then we'll have a quiet part. And then, anyway, there's just, so, I mean, it's a different idiom, clearly, but again, as a guitar, it's like a framework for a guitar. I really like the guitar. That part is really cool.
Yeah, and I definitely think that is something that is definitely a composed idea. That solo was a composed idea. Like, that was not off the cuff. Like, to me, it sounded like, as you're talking about the rhythmical variety, like the dynamic is changing in certain ways. Maybe you're, like you mentioned, like doing a dynamic by reducing volume, or having like the brass player, the woodwinds play. But there's dynamic in the tempo and in the structure of the song as far as like the feel is concerned, and I think that's why it makes it interesting, in my opinion, is because it's not just going for it; it actually has like a nice counterpoint to it as well, stuff like that.
Oh, certainly. I mean, there's a lot of variety and thoughtfulness in terms of the way that the guitar part is constructed, for sure. And as you say it. Yeah, right. I mean, this has to be composed. How could it be another way, So, which, and again, it's like a different kind of music. I think sometimes, the biggest issue between the Europeans and the African people, who still haven't learned how to get along despite, being in the Americas together for 500 years, is, just like, one musical tradition is more cerebral or something, and the other is more, corporeal or something, like out of your body as opposed to out of your head. Anyway, I mean, it just like it's different, there's a different focus.
Absolutely, and I think that's one thing. I mean, like, music that's more like rhythmically interesting or more rhythmically based. I'm sure the first instruments were probably drums and the human voice, I would imagine.
Sure.
And and then as far as like something that's coming out of your a composed idea out of your noggins, more like the classical stuff, like the Western music stuff like that. And it's interesting though, because rhythm is really what makes music what it is. That's the context of it, is everything. I mean, you could play a million arpeggios as 400 beats per minute, or as fast as 30 seconds, fast as you want to be, but if you don't have good feel and good rhythm, you have nothing, in my opinion.
Amen. Yeah.
Cool. All right, Mark. Well, that was cool to get your opinion on that. I think that that's one of my favorite guitar solos of all time, and I share some of your insights into why it's good. That's interesting. So, moving on, we're going to listen to a song by Obscura featuring Christian Munzner. Christian is a friend of mine, and he's been on the show, did a podcast. So thank you, Christian. I'm also looking forward to seeing you down in NAMM at the Siggy Braun booth, as we are both Siggy Braun artists. And Christian tours extensively, and I've actually took some lessons from Christian as far as about why and how he does things, not necessarily how to play them, but why he thinks the way that he does. So I'm interested to get Mark's opinion on this. And Christian has focal dystonia, and he's overcome that, and that's an issue where your motor skills are interrupted. Things aren't working as they normally should. So, shout out to Christian for overcoming that, and he's playing better than ever. And I think the best music that Christian has made has definitely been in the last 5 or 6 years. So let's check this out. All right, Mark, here we go. This is Solaris by Obscura. All right, Mark, what did you think about that?
Well, let me say firstly that technically very impressive, very clean, very very skillful playing. There's just no question of that. Or that seems that way to me. In terms of my custom to this, what was my my own prejudices really, But so it's so full. It's fast, and the drum line is so full. And then just as I was thinking this, and then he changes and becomes more longer pitches, and and allows the drum to take a solo. So I mean it's out of I'm not used to it, and it's it'd be easier for me to grasp it, if it were less full.
Understandable. So maybe with all the other instruments going on, the rhythm guitar tracks and the drums and stuff, if you were just to focus on the guitar solo, the melody itself, you'd be able to maybe decipher what's going on there a little bit more.
Something like that. Yeah. Just, I mean, because again, I'm not a big music listener, I mean, I don't know if you're allowed to say that in public, but I mean, for whatever reason, because I make enough noise myself practicing, and so then, so the good side of that, I think, is that much of the music that I've heard is live, and I really value that, because I mean, to me, of course, we got these wonderful technologies, and you can listen to what people are playing in Albania and stuff like this. I mean, this is really cool and marvelous, but at the same time, music is really something that happens in the moment, and it somehow needs to be live, or there, anyway, just you don't want to lose that aspect of it somehow.
Right, and I completely agree, and I completely understand. And let me say this, I almost did choose all live videos from these guys, and I wish that I would have, but I thought that maybe if it was the recorded versions of the songs, it would be easier to listen and hear, because sometimes with live videos, it's the production quality isn't that great sometimes, and I wanted to make sure that you heard these folks in the best way possible. But I completely agree with you, and I'm happy to say, out of all of these people, they're doing this live on a level that's just as good as a recording.
Well, I mean, let me say that too. I mean, here I'm acting like an expert. I mean, every one of these guys clearly very skilled and dedicated player. I mean, that much at least I know. You got to spend a lot of time doing this in a focused and intelligent way, or you're not going to be able to do this.
Right, and I think that knowing some of these guys, that they would completely agree with you. You know what I mean? They would say that if you're not able to play it live, don't play it at all, and that's the standard that unfortunately some people don't abide by. You're talking about technology, and yes, you can get away with a lot in the studio, and even with a laptop and a audio interface, if you know how to use the software, you can get away with a lot. And there was, like I said, an idea to use live videos, but a lot of them didn't sound that great. So what we're going to have to do, Mark, is we're going to have to do this again because there's a million other people, and we'll choose live videos. No, it's cool because this is good stuff, and it's really valuable information. So I got 2 more things to show you, and the next thing I'm going to show you, I'd like to listen to the whole song because it's just that good, but we won't go there. But what we're going to listen to next is Altitudes by Jason Becker. Jason Becker, in my opinion, is undoubtedly one of the best guitar players of all time. I mean, unfortunately, Jason has Lou Gehrig's disease. And he was someone that, it's funny about that disease, in my opinion, is that it hits a lot of different types of people, but it really has impacted a lot of people that were good at stuff like, like Lou Gehrig and Jason. So, this is a testament to Jason's ability. He was relatively, I think he was, 21 when he recorded this. And as a matter of fact, Jason was in a band called Cacophony with the first dude that we listened to, Marty Friedman. The first solo that we listened to, Mark, he was in a band with this guy we're about to listen to now. And that being said, Christian, the last dude that we watched, he was also in a band with a guy before in the Fermented Offal Discharge solo, the one that was the really composed one that we talked about. So it's interesting that a lot of these guys, have worked together and made some great music. And as a matter of fact, I almost did a complete video. Somebody did the world a favor by compiling the best Necrophagist solos, and we almost listened to that entire thing. But I thought this would be cool because with guitar playing, there's just like anything else in the world. There's a million people that are so good, and we could do this for 365 days for the foreseeable future, every hour of every day, and still find more people that are just amazing. So anyway, we're going to have to do this again because there's going to be a part 2 to this, and we're going to choose live videos, and I need to do some research and see who's going to shut me down on the copyright strikes. Like there's some names like, I almost did the list for like the best guitar solos according to whatever, magazine like Rolling Stone or whatever, but then it was like all those guys, not all of them, but there's a lot of people in there that aren't very good. And there's a lot of people that were left out of that list, and I don't mind saying that publicly because whoever made that list is high on drugs because there are some people missing on that list, and there are some people, like Rick Beato's pointed out, but whatever. But anyway, this dude should have been in the top 5. I don't care who you are. Right next to Segovia, here is Jason Becker with Altitudes. This is one of the best pieces of music written of all time, in my opinion. We can listen to that whole song too. It's pretty cool, in my opinion, anyway. Mark, tell us what you feel about that.
Oh, that's something else, you know. Wow, yeah, that's very. I mean, I that's a beautiful thing. The one of the things that struck me is the way. So first, it's very. I mean, there's a lot of freedom and a lot of. He's clearly there's a lot of like fearlessness in it. You know, I mean that's I don't know. I remember hearing a quote of the people who played together every night with the great jazz saxophonist. I'm looking for his name. The tenor sax player plays with Miles Davis. Anyway, so and they said, well, how do you guys? They said, oh yeah, well, we just trust each other with our lives. That's what it means to play in a group at that level. And you just that's what it is. This is why people can't do that is because there's a level of, he's fully there. He's fully present in that music, and that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, compositionally too, the dynamics are there, like you had mentioned dynamics earlier, and I think maybe this is a good.
Some of the clarity of the picking, so a lot of interesting variety. Very. I mean, wow, just very, very beautiful playing.
And the one thing about that piece, the melody, is that when it does that ascending, like there's like a couple of double stops that go to that ascending part, like down, down, down. Like I don't know how to, I don't know the intervals that he's playing off the top of my head. I probably should. I've been at it long enough now, but I don't know. But anyway, in that part, like that's like the hook to me, in my opinion. Like it gives it that, like it wants, like it's got so much tension right there. And when he makes that ascending step, whatever it looks like, it like resolves it. And a lot of can you talk about maybe the tonalities that he's using there? Like what kind of scales, like off the top of your head, like what is he?
There was one key change towards the beginning. I thought, oh, interesting, so I wish I could, I think really people, I think you're probably much more skilled than I am in terms of noticing and being able to articulate chordal changes. I suspect that because the violin's a very high-pitched instrument, it's difficult to play multiple notes, and so, consequently, and particularly too, anyway, just my own grasp of the chord structure is definitely, just not what it should be, and the guitar, you're aware of that. People, they come out of a really chordal understanding of music, which is really valuable. If you want compositionally very valuable, because then in terms of my impressions there, again, there's one change that surprised me. It basically, it seemed as if fairly open. So I don't know what instruments are playing in the back. Is that I'm not sure, the synthesizer. So then and those things, again, a difference with the classical music would be that when the instruments are made, you're playing, particularly the older style instruments, you're playing violins and like different things you blow through or whatever. The tuning is not as accurate. It's just not as accurate. It can't be as accurate. It's not as mechanized. It's not, and so you got to be sort of more deliberate about everything to keep people together. It's less, and this is what you see this in terms of like a conductor or something, which is like some guy and who really autocratic situation, who's like demanding that everybody do stuff immediately according to his whim. So that's a function of this kind of music, that partly you're dealing with very different instruments that don't, they don't share as many overtones or as much common sound as you would have in this type of music. I'm going on too long. I got to stop. And then and so it's different. And and that's one of the things I think is really saddening in the kind of the art music classical tradition, is the level of centralized control, and that's really important, necessary in any social setting or whatever, level of individual freedom, level of ability for people to cooperate, to play off each other, so that's kind of like really a thrill, or the delight to see that possibility in this kind of music.
Right, and I think that ties back into what you said about you're trusting people with your lives, and that's musically that's what's going on. So the last thing we're going to listen to, in my opinion, is probably one of the most shredtastic things there is, and it's over the top, but it's over the top with class and skill and precision. Now, a lot of people equate over the top with speed, and this is plenty fast, but this dude, in my opinion, is probably one of the best guitar players of all time, and this may be the most scary thing out there that sounds good from an era before your modern DAW. Anyway, here we go. This is good old Greg Howe, and this is the beginning of the legendary Hot Licks lesson video. Now, I'm sure this scared the shit out of everybody that ever seen it, especially back in the day. But Mark, give me your opinion on this. Here we go. I think that's a sequence from Mario 3. That's definitely from a video game.
So is this composed?
No, he's just going for it.
Wow.
Hi there. This is Greg Howe.
Yeah. So what do you think about that? I know it's a lot of guitar for the sake of guitar, but obviously he's trying to sell some VHS cassettes. What did you think of that?
I'm real glad I am not, signed up to play next on the talent show after this guy, I mean, like, wow. Yeah, like, wow. The part I find particularly impressive, and the whole thing is impressive, is the big shapes he's doing, like, I mean, that's, yeah, wow. And again, it's just so clear. So, the right hand technique is so consistent. Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure what to say,
That's kind of how I feel when I watched it for the first time, too, is like, the one thing about that guy that I think is awesome is that Greg is known as a jazz fusion guitarist. And he had done a neoclassical album called Abrupt Terminal. And I listen to that too all the time, and it's awesome too. But that right there is just Greg at his best. But the one thing about Greg, like you said, you had mentioned, Mark, is like the large arpeggio shapes, and they're a lot of them are diatonic, or he's using different parts of different chords in there. He's changing. He might be starting on an A, and then it's going to a C, and then an E, or you know what I mean, like outlining that minor triad or whatever that's going on, or like the major third arpeggios sound really interesting too that he's using, and and he's diatonic and everything like that. But that guy's so good at like combining technique. And I think if you were to take Greg that we just listened to, and you were to take Jason from Altitudes, the song that you had, the song that was really, really cool, the compositionally that you're talking about had the twists and the turns of the chord changes. I think if you take those two dudes' playing style, you get people like Christian that have like these, that play it in a metal context, but they almost have like a more of a jazz fusion kind of mentality. And that's something that I find interesting, especially now, because, once you get to the point of, playing, you play a lot and years go by, it's like you don't want to do the same thing over and over again.
Sure.
Yourself. And those inflections to me are what makes the music interesting, not just like how fast can they play or look at all those crazy arpeggios. It's like, what are they playing? To me, that's what, separates the good from the great. And, Greg is a great guitar player, and there's so many people, especially from that era, like, that was one thing, too, like in the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s, it seemed like music in general, and I don't know about maybe in your field or your idiom, so to speak, but did you feel that maybe music used to be a little more cerebral? It used to be appreciated a little bit more than what we're seeing nowadays, where it's so much now about image, but maybe, at this point, 30 years ago, it was more about actually being able to play.
Well, I don't know how. Yeah, I would say so. But again, it kind of depends on where you are, because like I spent some years living in Mexico, and I had a job in a mariachi, and we were playing parties at different kinds of parties, and we play in churches and play in parades and like crazy stuff, And what I mean is that in that context, and then it doesn't line up chronologically. So you're in a different place, because the people are accustomed then to music that's live. The quality varies quite a bit, and very often the band would be loaded and, too much tequila or whatever. Anyway.
That's rock and roll. Man.
Or something falls on the ground. Who knows what happens, that stuff is every day, but at the same time, but it's very much in the moment that, that's inescapable, and so again, and it's really happening, and, and that's cool, but, and it's not, these are not, world-class artists probably. I'm speaking of my own, so what we're watching is
for sure.
So, but what you were saying before, I want to get back to that, which is that, yeah, I certainly believe that to keep in mind, some kind of larger scale ideas, and one good way to do that is to study different traditions, because they're rich, because there's a lot of value. The people are doing things not only to impress and not only to, play as many black notes as possible in a short time, but because they got some, they're trying to, they're trying to get somewhere, they're trying to say something that's important to them, and that needs to be present. And you really notice it when it's not. You know, even if you can't put your finger on it, but you feel like, okay, yeah, so what? And I mean, and I think that's particularly true, you know, in the classical world, where there are many players who've spent too long in a practice room, and you know, I mean, God bless them for working hard at it, but I mean, but you got to do it out of some. It has to be your own desire to say something.
Absolutely. I think, you know, creating something, not just going through the motions. And I think music is not a sport. You know, sometimes we pretend it is, or or stuff like that, or we want it to be who's the fastest, who can play all the notes, or who can, but creating stuff is truly where it's at. And Mark, I really appreciate you taking the time to sit through this with me, and hopefully you'd like to do it again.
Yeah, let's do it. Right on,
man. Yeah, and we'll choose live videos next time, and I won't overthink that. But anyway, you guys have an awesome day. Thank you for joining us. As always, like and subscribe is appreciated. And once again, Mark Babson, awesome violinist. You listen to his work, it's out there. Me and Mark have worked on some music, and we'll definitely be jamming in the future, and we'll put some of those videos out. But you guys have an awesome rest of your day. Thanks.